In the beginning, the Son was Eloah. The son of El was both with El, and the son of El was Eloah.
In the beginning, the Son was Eloah. The son of El was both with El, and the son of El was Eloah. This one was in the beginning with El. All things were made by him, and without him nothing was made of that which was made. For he is life. This life is the lamp of men, and the lamp does shine in the gloom, but the gloom and darkness do not have power over it. El sent a certain man. His name was Yochanan. This one came for a witness, in order to give witness from afar. He is truly a lamp, and he shines on every man in this world. He is eternal, and the world was made by him. But the world does not recognize him, neither the power of his words, even those who do not receive him. Only to all of them who receive him, he gives ability that they be made sons of El, those who believe in his name, who are not born of blood, that is, by the knowledge of sins, nor of the will of flesh, nor of the will of man, but they are born of the will of El. And so, El was made flesh and dwelt among you, and we saw his light, that he is Echad alone, and was brought forth from the Father, who is full of grace and truth. Yochanan did witness of him, and cried out, saying, This is he of whom I said that he who is ready to come after me existed long ago, even before the days. And by his completeness all of us have obtained grace, and by him is the grace. For the law was given through Moshe. Truly, grace and truth came through Yeshua Mashiach. No man saw El in eternity, the Son, Echad and only begotten, who is the Son of the Father. This is Eloah Echad. This is his scroll, and this is the witness of Yochanan. When the Yahudim sent priests and Lewiim from Yerushalayim, that they should ask him who he was, he confessed and did not deny, but confessed that he was not Mashiach. So they asked him, If so, who are you? Are you Eliyahu? Are you not prophet? But he said, No. Then they said to him, Tell us who you are, in order that we may return an answer to them who sent us. What do you say of yourself? He answered, I am the voice which cries in the wilderness, Make the way of Yahuwah straight, as Yeshaya the prophet had said. Now they who were sent to him were of the Perishim. So they asked him and said to him, Why are you immersing, if you are not Mashiach, nor Eliyahu, nor prophet? Yohanan answered them and said, I am immersing you in water. However, he whom you do not recognize abides among you. He is ready to come after me, but he was before me, him whose shoelace I am not worthy to draw off. These things were done in Beit Anya, beyond the Yarden, where Yochanan was immersing. And on the next day Yochanan saw Yeshua, who came unto him, and he said, Behold, this is El, who takes away the iniquities from the world. It is he of whom I said, After me comes the mighty one, who existed before me. For he is before me, and I did not recognize him, but in order that he should be published in Yashar'el. Because of this I came, and am immersing in water. And Yochanan did witness of him, saying, I saw the Ruach descending from the heavens almost as a dove, and remaining upon him. Truly, he who sent me that I should immerse with water, he said to me, he upon whom you will see the Ruach descending and remaining upon him, this is he who immerses in Ruach HaKodesh. And I saw it, and am doing witness that this is the son of El. And on another day, Yochanan and two of his Talmudim stood again, looking at Yeshua as he walked, and said, Behold, the Malach of Yahuwah. And two Talmudim heard him speak, and went after Yeshua. Then Yeshua, turning himself around and seeing them following after him, said unto them, Come and see it. So they came, and saw where he stayed, and they stayed there that day. And it was about the 10th hour. Now Andri was the brother of Shimon, and Shimon Kepha was one of the 12, who heard of him from Yochanan, and followed him. And this one first found Shimon his brother, and said to him, We found Mashiach. And he brought him unto Yeshua. And Yeshua looked at him, saying, You are Shimon the son of Yonah. You will be called Kepha, meaning rock. So the next day he wanted to depart to Galilee. And he found Philip, and said to him, Come after me. Now Philip was from the city Bethsaida, where Andre and Kepha and Philip were from. Then he found Nathanael, and said to him, We found Yeshua the son of Joseph of Nazareth. It is he of whom Moshe wrote in the law and in the prophets. But Nathanael said to him, Can there be any good thing in Nazareth? Philip said to him, Come and see him. Yeshua Mashiach saw Nathanael, who came there, and said, Whom do you think that truth is from? Man of Yashar'el, who is without any deception? Nathanael said to him, How do you recognize me? Yeshua answered and said to him, Before Philip had called you, I saw you under the fig tree. Nathanael answered him and said, Rabbi, you are the son of Eloah. You are the king of Yashar'el. Yeshua answered and said to him, Are you able to believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will still see greater things than this. And he said to him, In truth, I say to you, that you will see the heavens opened, and the messengers of Elohim ascending and descending because of the Son of Man. Shabbat Shalom, and welcome everyone to the very first gathering of our online Sabbath church. It's been a long time coming. I've been working on different titles for this ecclesia, one of which includes the word ecclesia, but the Diaspora of Yashar'el stuck. If that title confuses you, it's referring to the fact that the house of Israel was tossed out of the land and scattered to the furthest corners of the earth. That's just about where we find ourselves now in history. The children of Israel were offered the blessing or the curse, and they chose the curse. That's the bad news. There is, however, good news. I absolutely love this passage in Deuteronomy, which states the following. This comes from Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 1 through 6. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are upon you, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before you, and you shall call them to mind among all the nations, whether Yahuwah Elohika has driven you, and shall return unto Yahuwah Elohika, and shall obey his voice according to all that I command you this day, you and your children, with all your heart and with all your soul, that then Yahuwah Elohika will turn your captivity and have compassion upon you, and will return and gather you from all the nations, whether Yahuwah Elohika has scattered you. If any of yours be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will Yahuwah Elohika gather you, and from thence will he fetch you. And Yahuwah Elohika will bring you into the land which your father possessed, and you shall possess it. And he will do you good and multiply you above your fathers. And Yahuwah Elohika will circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed, to love Yahuwah Elohika with all your heart and with all your soul, that you may live. This particular promise hasn't come to fruition yet. Not for us at any rate. We are the generation which is returning to the Most High and seeking the ancient path to obey his voice according to all that he commanded us. That being said, this gathering, as well as the Sabbaths to follow, is a congregation, an ecclesia, an online one. Despite what seminary students will tell you, the church age, if we want to call it that, began at Pentecost. just not the one they tell you post-Messiah. It actually goes much further back to Mount Sinai, to the wedding ceremony between Yahuwah, the Most High Elohim, and his children, Yashar'el. So we welcome everyone to listen in, and we will be opening up the mics in a little while so that everyone might add their own observations to the subject at hand. But we do ask of those who do contribute that you not only hold to the testimony of Yahushua Messiah, but to our Father's commands. This is not a place to argue in favor of lawlessness. In regards to the wide road, there is literally 99.999999% of the internet which will celebrate lawlessness, but we will not do that here. Thank you for your understanding. So let's open up in prayer. Yahuwah, Most High Elohim, Father of spirits, the I Am, self-existent and eternal. We love you and seek to be obedient to you only because you first loved us. It is you who have been obedient in keeping your own promises and not the other way around. We love your Torah, your instructions in righteousness, because they are a mirror reflection of your character. We want to better know you, to understand your will, and live eternally in your presence in service to your priesthood. Clothe us with the wisdom of your set-apart Ruach. Teach us to walk in the footsteps of your Son, Yahushua HaMashiach. Thank you for opening our eyes and showing us the truth. We pray these things in your name, in the name of your Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, and the Ruach HaKodesh. Amen. Now, quick introduction here. My name is Noel Joshua Hadley. I am the creator, main writer, and editor-in-chief of the Unexpected Cosmology, as most of you know. I'm 40 years old. I was raised a pastor's son and grew up in a parsonage, so think evangelical and Baptist denominations. Yahuwah brought me to the truth in the early months of 2015. He literally woke me up. The story goes as follows. I was standing there in my church. It was Palm Sunday. I was holding one of my twin boys, and my wife and I were dedicating them. A lot of our good friends were dedicating their children with us. One of the pastors of the church, who was a good friend of mine, was dedicating his daughter with us. And another pastor was up there speaking about dedications, and he was praying, and I didn't hear any of that. That just completely muted out. I was standing there holding my son, and I literally heard a voice. And it said, wake up. And just like that, boom, a light switch actually turned on my head, like from darkness to light. The words were wake up, and a light switch went on. And immediately, this is like something out of the Old Testament, like an audible voice. And I look around, I'm holding my kid like a deer in front of headlights. I'm like, did anyone else hear that? Like, nobody else heard it. And I immediately went home, and I was just like, yeah, what do you, I would have said back then, Father or God, whatever. And I was like, whatever it is you want to show me, show it to me. I will be obedient. I will listen. I will obey. And that just started my journey in truth. And within a couple months, by June of 2015, so like 2 months later, my wife and I have figured out that we see the writing on the wall. We figure out that judgment is coming to California. It's coming to the whole world. And we don't want to be there when it happens. We sold 6 weeks within 6 weeks, we had sold all of our house, our possessions, everything. We moved into an RV, and we hit the road and started driving. And that journey has brought me to where I am now. So I've been in Torah now for, even though I was raised in the church, I've been in Torah now for 3 years, meaning I have just finished my third Torah portion cycle. And I can honestly say that in the last, I can truly say that I've learned more about Scripture and the nature of Yahuwah in that time than probably 2 or 3 lifetimes combined. I mean, this has been an accelerated journey when you start, realizing that the rest of Scripture is just talking about Torah. That's all it's doing. And finally, it started making sense to me. So hopefully, I think many people in their walk, as they're walking through Torah, will come to the same conclusions, that we are just learning at this accelerated pace, and this is clearly the Father doing it. So with that, I'm going to be handing it over to Rob. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Take it away.
Okay, I'm Rob on the server here, Rob Breath of Yah. Uh, my quick testimony here about me is my evangelical background, very similar as Noel was mentioning. been in 30 years of that. And then come around 2014-ish area into 15, I started getting into the questioning things that I've been hearing and learning and over the years, and the more that conspiracy route, I guess you would say, of things that are we're seeing, hearing, and weren't adding up, weren't making sense. So as I looked into the evidence and logic of those things, realizing that there are the truth is not being told as we see it, many missing things in that. So as I was started getting had this spirit in me that just wanted to know the truth. So I was digging into that, and as I was doing that, and I was doing my Bible studies and so forth as I normally do. But as I was digging into these things, I come down the road of different paths when you're going down these explorations, and one of them being flat Earth, and so I checked out flat Earth. And while I was doing that, I came across, the Rob Skiba. Rob Skiba was one of those that I came across talking about these things. Plus, mixed with the Nephilim and all the other stuff he was on, totally fit with what I was looking at, what I was looking for. And I got to a point where I had an aha moment where when I'm looking at this, it just I'm like sitting in front of my TV. I just listened to something. I'm looking down at my Bible, and I realized it just popped in my head like a download. I didn't hear an audible voice, but I just got this download of what if what if we're being deceived? And I'm thinking in the mindset of, as a Christian, as what I'm learning, what I'm reading, what I know, what if I'm being deceived? And this whole time I'm thinking, hey, they're being deceived, not me. And so that just hit me. And with what I was looking at, I'm like, you know what, I really need to look into this, the Torah aspect of the scriptures, and see how this fits, because everything I'm hearing is making sense, and my spirit was leading me there. So uh, 2000 ended about that was in 2015-ish, and then I started exploring that in tour groups for ever since. And as exploring that, it just each and every week, each and every year, I'm learning. Just as Noel said, the things that I'm learning, the things I'm understanding, it's like, yeah, I'm now given the key to understanding of things. This wisdom is being given to me, because that was like the first thing I prayed for when I'm like, what if I'm being deceived? Grant me wisdom so I may understand these things. And so here I am. So that's more or less where I'm at now. Michael.
Sure. Shabbat Shalom. I'm Michael 1380 on the server. A little bit about me. I got married 2 months ago, and we're traveling the country currently. We're in the Ozarks, so checking that place out. A little bit about me and where I came from. I was born into a watered-down Roman Catholic household. I
Okay, I think we may have lost Michael. So if his internet comes back, then we will have him reintroduce. Rob, I assume you're still with us. So anyways, okay, let me just go over what we'll be talking about tonight. We will be for the okay, I think he's coming back on. Michael, you back with us?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. The internet's not the greatest here. Where did I leave off?
You were in a Roman Catholic family upbringing.
All right. Yeah, so I received communion, not confirmation. I was agnostic pretty much my whole life. In the world as much as you can get. Everything Babylon had to offer, I wanted it. Very ungrateful, selfish, and patient. I came through conspiracy as well. Started, quote unquote, waking up in '08 through Alex Jones, to believe it or not. Was a diehard for about 5 years. Didn't miss a show, would go on vacation, and would still catch up on all the shows. 9/11, all those other conspiracies. At that time, I got into the Ron Paul movement and libertarianism as well. And it's funny looking back now that I'm into this Torah walk, and now I'm actually all about the Constitution and non-aggression of His kingdom. And it's funny how Yah works into that. I got into some legal trouble back in the days, and that's when I started reading my Bible. I started in Genesis, like any normal person, any normal book. But once I did get to the New Testament, I have many of the same questions everyone else has. Why does it seem like two separate gods? Like Rob, I actually found Skiba myself early in my walk, through Nephilim, Nimrod, Flat Earth, and eventually Virtual House Church and Torah.
Okay, he just cut out again. So if he comes back, then we'll have him finish. But anyways, guys, so we'll be moving on. So tonight we're going to be going through the Hebrew Gospel of John, or the Hebrew Gospel of Yohanan. I'm really excited about this because for years, and I've been saying this for years, that the Gospels had to have been written in Hebrew. They had to have been. And we've had the Hebrew Gospel of Matthew for a very long time. And people will say, well, that what they did is they just took the Greek or the Latin and they just kind of copied it back to Hebrew, which may be true in the case of the Hebrew Gospel of Matthew. But these four Gospels are completely different, and this we're not going to be going through this Hebrew Gospel of Matthew, but it is clearly different than the old Hebrew Gospel of Matthew. And one of the things we will see in this study, we're not going to necessarily see all of it tonight, but I think we will see that this is it's impossible. It's actually, I shouldn't say the word impossible, but it's very highly unlikely that somebody came along and took the Latin or the Greek and transferred the Hebrew Gospel or the Gospel of John back to Hebrew. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we're going to go over tonight. These are called the Separad Gospels. They come from Spain, apparently. So all four, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, come from the same source. Now, the people translating this, they haven't finished Luke yet. They have Matthew, Mark, and John. And once they finish Luke, they're going to be putting it, I think, into like one volume, like a Bible, and they're going to be selling it, I think, profit-free. So it's really, really cool that people are doing this. And their translations, they show you the Hebrew, and you can match it up with the English. So, unfortunately for us, the history of these books appear to begin with the Vatican Vault. I'm sorry to break the news, but that, I know, bummer, right? But is anyone here really surprised? The Vatican has amassed an enormous and unspecified collection of texts. We have no clue how many they have. For all I know, and what I suspect to be the case, the burning of the Library of Alexandria was a false flag attack and just a cover story for the scrubbing of history. Already, you guys have been in this church meeting for 5-10 minutes now. We've already been talking about conspiracy and Alex Jones. It's great. Who guards that history but the Vatican? We can only speculate upon how many books are thought lost and still being hidden from us, or completely unknown to begin with that the Vatican knows about. All puzzle pieces to understanding history, I'm sure. One recent release by the Vatican, and I've mentioned this often, is The Lost Book of King Og. They released that in 2017. Instance after instance, the Vatican claims these books are discovered, quote unquote, in their vaults. They somehow got lost and shuffled around in the paperwork, and they just now dug it out and discovered it. That's usually their story. That's how these things go. But you and I both know that's ridiculous. Rather recently, the Vatican has revealed a catalog recording in total, I believe it's now 801 manuscripts, dating from the 9th to 16th centuries. Okay, I want you guys all, for the people in here that we've been talking about the mud flood and millennial kingdom and all that, these documents all date from the 9th to 16th centuries, the Middle Ages to the Renaissance. So I guess you could say the Vatican holds the most important collection of Hebrew manuscripts in the world. Among these invaluable manuscripts that make up the collection, we have the entire Bible in both Hebrew and Aramaic. Apparently, the only known example of the Palestinian Targum originates from the Vatican. And again, as you guys know, I've been quoting a lot from the Targum, the Aramaic Targum. It's been kind of picking up steam in the Torah community, but still most people don't even know about this. It's like the Targum is still cutting edge. And apparently that comes from the same collection in the Vatican, all right, that we're going to be reading tonight. Including in the collection is a bunch of midrashes from the 11th century and the oldest known Sephra dating back to the 9th century. Among these Hebrew texts, from what I've been able to learn, is, again, these Gospels from Spain. All four of them, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I've said this before and I'll say it again. No true Hebrew author of Scripture would write in Greek. That's my conclusion. I could be wrong about that. I really don't believe that if there was any first century Hebrew writer who wants to be legitimate, who is making a claim on the Hebrew Messiah, would write in Greek. All right, they would be translated into Greek and then into Latin and whatever else, but they would have written it in Hebrew. There's a lot of reasons for that. One is that they wouldn't want to write the names of pagan gods into their words, and you can't help that when you're speaking English, Greek, any of these. Okay, that's one of my reasons. Many will argue that these Gospels are simply Latin or Greek translations into Hebrew, as I've mentioned, but as the translators of the Gospels have demonstrated, and I hope to demonstrate in this series, that's not even possible. So tonight we will be seeing just a taste of how very Hebrew and non-Greek the Hebrew Gospel of Yohanan truly is. We're going to see that. We're just going to be covering chapter 1 tonight, and it's a little jarring. But you're going to see this is very Hebrew, what we're going to go through. We're tossing all the Greek stuff out. All right. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rob, and he's going to take it away.
Okay, I'm going to read the first section here. We'll each read sections for this first chapter. In Hebrew Gospel of John, we're going to start chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, the Son was Eloah, and the Son of El was both with El, and the Son of El was Eloah. This one was in the beginning with El. All things were made by him, and without him nothing was made, of which was made. For he is life, and this life is the lamp of men. The lamp does shine in the gloom, but the gloom and darkness do not have power over it. El sent a certain man, his name was Yahuwah. This one came for a witness, in order to give witness from afar. He is truly a lamp, and he shines on every man in this world. He is eternal, and the world was made by him. But the world does not recognize him, neither the power of his words, even those who do not receive him. Only to all of them who receive him, he gives ability that they be made sons of El, those who believe in his name, who are not born of blood, that is, by the knowledge of sins, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but they are born of the will of El. And so El was made flesh and dwelt among us. And we saw his light, and he is Echad alone, and was brought forth from the Father, who is full of grace and truth. Yochanan did witness of him and cried out, saying, This is he of whom I said that he who is ready to come after me existed long ago, even before the days. And by his completeness, all of us have obtained grace, and by him is the grace. For the law was given through Moshe. Truly, grace and truth came through Yeshua Mashiach. No man saw El in eternity. The Son, Echad, and only begotten, who is the Son of the Father, this is Eloah Echad. So I'll stop there, and we'll start with Michael. If you want to start with the commentary you have regarding what I just read, and go through that, and then from there we'll go to Noel, and then follow up with me again.
Sure. I just want to apologize. I'm on my phone now, and I have better reception. So out of the three sections, I had the most notes on this part. So I might be a little bit. The more research I was doing on John, everything was pointing to this, how it was different than the other Gospels. Was John was highlighting Yeshua's miracles and signs. So I just wanted to read one or two verses that kind of highlights it. And we'll get to it eventually, but it's John 20, 30, and 31. So then many other signs Yeshua also performed in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book,
but these have been written so that you may believe that Yeshua is the Christ, the Son of God, that by believing you may have life in his name. So I thought that was a good summary of what we're going to read, even just starting on this chapter 1. Okay, so my first note would be on John 1:1. I started looking into the Hebrew word of aloha, and it's Strong's 433. And it didn't take long before I got to the first instance in Deuteronomy 32:15. And I just wanted to read that real quick. So, but Jeshurun waxed fat and kicked. Thou art waxen fat. Thou art grown thick. Thou art covered with fatness. Then he forsook God, or Eloha, which made him, and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation. And I was like, whoa, okay. So it's equating Aloha with being the rock. And then as we know, Yeshua is that rock. 1 Corinthians 10, for I do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, that our fathers were all under the cloud, and they all passed through the sea. And they all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. And they all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. But they were drinking from a spiritual rock, which followed them, and that rock was Christ. So that was just one of the first things that stuck out with me as I was researching that. I thought that was interesting. The first use of aloha in the Old Testament spoke of the rock of our salvation, which is Yeshua. The second one was number 4. This is not breathtaking here or anything crazy, but I just wanted to highlight the cross-reference that for he is life, and the life is the lamp of men. And everyone knows this, but I just had to say it. Psalm 119, 105, your word, we know Yeshua is the word. He is the lamp to my feet and a light to my path. I just think that's amazing. So nothing really revolutionary there, but I just wanted to make that known. Number 5. So, and the lamp does shine in the gloom, but the gloom and darkness do not have power over it. So I did a word study on the darkness and gloom, and I found 2 instances in the Old Testament. So I'm trying to, since this is a Hebrew New Testament, I'm trying to link it to the Old. So darkness and gloom shows up twice in the Old Testament. So, and it's both times pretty much the day of the wrath or the coming of Yeshua. So Joel 2:2, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness. As dawn is spread over the mountains, so there is a great and mighty people. There has never been anything like it, nor will there be anything, will there be again after it. So I just wanted to highlight the darkness and gloom pretty much on the day of the Lord. The second time it's mentioned, darkness and gloom, is Zephaniah 1:15. That day will be a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of destruction and desolation, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and blackness. So again, I just think it's awesome that the Hebrew is saying the lamp, which is Yeshua, shines in the gloom, and the gloom and darkness does not have power over it. So I thought that was a good tie-in as well. My next thing is number 8. So it's not in the Hebrew, but it hit me during this study. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. And it just hit me that, everyone's focused on the person getting baptized, but John gets to witness that light creation being made. And now how we're supposed to preach the gospel and baptize people. I have a newfound perspective of actually seeing that new person come out of the water and become that light. So I just thought it was interesting that he wasn't that light, but was sent out to bear witness of the light. He saw the light. He became a witness of it. So I thought that was awesome that anytime you baptize someone, that you're witnessing a light as well, like John did to Yeshua. A few more. Number 10, I thought that was interesting that it said he was eternal, and the world does not recognize him. So I don't have much except that I looked for Jeff Benner, what he had to say about it. He's a Hebrew scholar. At least from what I found, that eternal is also olam in Hebrew. And he says the Hebrew word olam literally means beyond the horizon. So when looking off in the far distance, it is difficult to make out any details, and what is beyond that horizon cannot be seen. This concept is olam. So I thought that was pretty interesting, that Yeshua was eternal from the beginning. Let's see, I have 4 more. Let's see, real quick, number 11. Neither the power of his words, even those who do not receive him. I was just linking that to where that's how creation happened. Like creation happened by spoken word. So I just wanted to correlate that they didn't even recognize his words, the people, who did not receive him. Let's see. Number 12, only to all of them who receive them, he gives ability that they be made sons of El, those who believe in his name. Before I got cut off, I was, going to end it that Rob and I were the presenters on the Wisdom Holy Family. And I just wanted to point out that this just, again, talks about that we will be made sons of El. We are grafted in that Holy Family. And it's, I just think the Hebrew does a better job of that than the Greek. Two more. Number 13. Let's see. Who are not born of blood, that is by the knowledge of sins, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but they are born of the will of El. So I'm assuming knowledge of sins is knowledge of good and evil. And I know there's extra biblical books that talk about Adam and Eve being spiritual light beings. And it appears they were given blood once they fell. So I think this kind of hints at that the blood is knowledge of sin. When we get resurrected, it doesn't mention blood, right? We're spirit and water. And I just thought that was awesome how it's being way more descriptive and insinuating for sure that Adam and Eve were spiritual beings, or it could be reading into that. And finally, number 18. So no man saw El in eternity, the Son, Echad and only begotten, who is the Son of the Father. This is Eloha Akkad. I wanted to also show that in John 5:37, and the Father who sent me, he has testified about me. You have neither heard his voice at any time, nor seen his form. So I wanted to point out that these two passages kind of give credence to the Targum, that Yeshua was always there. And so he wasn't even the one talking to them. It was always the Word. And I thought that was a good way to end it, that they're just begotten. They're Akkad and begotten. But and to me, it appears to give credence to the Targum, as Noel was saying. That's what I got for the first part.
Okay, so I want everyone just to look at John 1:1 again. Now, most of us probably have the Greek John 1:1 memorized. I mean, it's something that little kids memorize. It goes, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." All right, or you could say, "In the beginning was Elohim." Oh no, the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. Correct. So the first time I read this is why I said earlier, this was really unjarring. I was like, wait, what? Like, it wasn't even there. So I just want to read this again. In the beginning, the Son was Eloah. The Son of El was both with El, and the Son of El was Eloah. Now, in this room tonight is our residential Hebrew expert, Pamela, and maybe she can chime in a little bit later. I would be interested to hear her take on this when we open up the mics, because my understanding is, keep in mind now that he's starting this just like Genesis. It's in Hebrew, in the beginning. All right. And we all know this, it's like that in Greek. But we talked about this a couple weeks ago, that in the Paleo Hebrew, that in the beginning actually had sun in it. Right. So in the beginning, we see the sun. And so it's almost like to a Hebrew audience, Yohanan is commenting, that sun you see in there, that sun was there and he was Eloah. All right. So those are the kind of things we miss when we're not digging into the Hebrew, Paleo Hebrew, and I don't even pretend to read it, just so everyone knows. So the Greek uses logos 3 times. However, here in the Hebrew, we see ben being used. Now, again, in the Aramaic Targums, we see the word throughout, and I think that we could even find it in the Tanakh or the Torah in Hebrew. However, the Hebrew uses ben, right? So one thing I'm going to show in here is that John is writing this to the Yahudim. Okay, he's not writing this to the Greeks. And this is kind of the big thing with the opening chapter of John has been heavily criticized as being pagan, and he's writing to a pagan audience, and he's trying to connect with them, like with logos, with the word logos, and he's not doing that here. So, to a Hebrew reading this in the first century, this is what they're going to pick up immediately when he says, "This is the Son." All right, they're going to think of Psalm chapter 2, verses 6 through 12, which says, and I think I'm reading this in the King James. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. Yahuwah hath said unto me, Thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings. Be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve Yahuwah with fear and rejoice with trembling. Hiss the sun, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. Now, just so you guys know that if you guys actually get a copy of this PDF of the Hebrew Gospel of John, this is some of the commentary they actually put in the beginning that I'm reading off. They talk about this verse, but also Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 through 7. So the Hebrew reader in the first century reading this is going to they're going to go straight to Yashar'el. Chapter 9, verse 6 through 7 says, and this is familiar to all of us, For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty Elohim, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Shalom. Of the increase of his government and shalom there shall be no end, upon the throne of David, and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth, even forever. The zeal of Yahuwah of hosts will perform this. All right. I'm just thinking, wait a second. I might have not read son in there, but it's in there. I don't know why I don't have it. Oh, yeah. That's what the son is given. Okay, so that's it right there. All right. The next thing, this one kind of stabbed me in the heart. I have to admit that. My website is called The Unexpected Cosmology. I love the word cosmology. I hope it's not a pagan god. It probably is. But this is interesting because in John 1:10, he says, let me read the Greek here. All right, it says, "He was in the world," and that word would be cosmos for cosmology. He was in the cosmology, and the cosmology was made by him, and the cosmology knew him not, or the world knew him not. Well, this is the interesting things about studying Hebrew, is that rather than the word cosmos, and this is one of the things that you can totally see how this was translated from Hebrew into Greek, and whoever was translating this was having a hard time come up with the word, and so they translated it to cosmos 3 times. When in fact, let me just lost my notes here. The word that's used is olam in Hebrew. Olam can mean either eternal or world. I think that its older use, if I'm not mistaken, meant world, but by the first century, it could also mean eternal. It's actually a play on words, and in that one verse, it's used 3 times. So the way it's interpreted in the Hebrew would be, if I can find it, because now I just lost it. Hold on here. 110. There it is. So he is olam, eternal, and the world was made by him, but the olam, world, does not recognize him. All right, so I think he uses it again somewhere in here, but you can see the play on words right there. One of the proofs that the Gospel of John is written to the Yahudim in the Greek, there's a defining difference in chapter 1 between the Greek and Hebrew. The Greek in John chapter 1 verses 11-12 says this. Let me see if I get this right. He came unto his own. No, I'm not reading the right verse here. I'm reading it wrong. He says, in the Greek, he says he dwelt among us. All right. The Hebrew says he dwelt among you. All right. So you could just us versus you. All right, that's a huge difference, and you start to get this picture that the translators, when they were bringing this into Greek, they were trying to make it identifiable to the Greeks. Right? We went over that with like the word logos. It's a very Greek word. It's a concept that was really popular with them. It was popular in Alexandria and so on and so forth. But here we see that he's writing to the Yahudim. He's saying, Yahusha, the son, he was among you. Okay, so obviously he wasn't in Rome. He wasn't in Egypt. He was in Palestine, in Yashar'el. All right. Again, and just to compare, in chapter 1, verses 26, I know we're not there yet, but we're going to read it anyways really quickly. Yohanan the Baptist says, I am immersing you in water. However, he whom you do not recognize abides among you. So we see the same context. John the Baptist is saying he resides among you, the Yahudim, and John says the same thing. All right, so hopefully that's settled. The last thing I think I wanted to talk about before we move on is the but. Okay, a lot of you probably know what I'm talking about here. It's the big but. It's in this chapter. It is in, man, I just keep jumping around here and I'm losing my notes. Chapter 1, verse 17. And I'm glad Rob put in here the King James, because in verse 17, King James from the Textus Receptus, it says, for the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Yahushua HaMashiach. Oh dear. So is he really saying here that that Moses, he gave us the law, but thank you, Jesus, you've come and saved us from it, because now we get truth and grace from you. All right. So first and foremost, this is one of the dirty little secrets, and the King James only people are going to hate me for this, but the King James added the but. All right. So you can't even find that in the Textus Receptus. So if any other, and I'm glad that Rob actually used this translation here in this PDF and this file, because he had to use, I think, NIV, NASB, any of those. It would have said, great. It's for the law was given by Moses, grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. However, this is what the Hebrew says: for the law was given through Moshe, truly grace and truth came through Yeshua HaMashiach. Now, the dispensationalists are going to see this from a very different lens, however you look at this. But we see, of course, grace throughout Torah. It is not a new concept in the New Testament. One such example comes from Genesis 6, chapter 6, verse 8, which says, but Noah found grace in the eyes of Yahuwah. Here's another great one from Psalm 119. Michael already quoted from 119, 105. But this is 119, 142, which says, your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your law is truth. So we see right here that John or Yohanan is saying the truth of Torah and the grace of Torah has been the Son in the beginning all along. Now, we're already on our first week of our church, and I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to quote from Paul, from Shaul, because I'm in a really good mood tonight. So from 2 Timothy 1:9, this is what Shaul says. He has saved us and called us to a holy life, not because of anything we have done, but because of his own purpose and grace. This grace was given us in Mashiach Yahusha before the beginning of time. So even Paul is saying here, from the very beginning, in the beginning, actually before the beginning of in the beginning, grace was given by Yahusha. So this is nothing new. All right. Now, what I did is because I wanted to find some grace passages in the Aramaic Targum. And I think these are beautiful, because I think this is what John is actually connecting here about who Yahusha is, what this grace is of who Yahusha is. All right. So It's actually, I found a lot of passages in Leviticus in the Targum dealing with sacrifices that talk with grace. So here's some examples of grace and sacrifice. This comes from Leviticus 1:9. And he shall wash the inwards and his legs with water, speaking about a sacrifice, what the Levitical priest is to do. And the priest shall offer the whole upon the altar of burnt offering, an oblation to be accepted with grace before Yahuwah. There it is. Again, in Leviticus chapter 1, verse 13. It is an offering to be received with grace before Yahuwah. Again, in Leviticus chapter 2, verse 9. An oblation to be accepted with grace before Yahuwah. And keep in mind, these are all sacrifices, right? And they're accepted with grace. Here's another one, Leviticus 2:2. An oblation to be accepted with grace before Yahuwah. So clearly these ancients had an understanding of grace, the grace of the Most High, in these sacrifices. And here, what Yohanan is doing is connecting the dots. He's saying, guys, that grace that was given by the Most High, it was always Yeshua from the very beginning. All right, so that's what I have. I'm going to hand it back over to you, Rob, and take over.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to add a little bit more information on John 1:1 here. I'm going to read from the Septuagint, Psalm 32, 6-7. By the word of the Lord, the heavens were made firm, and by the breath of his mouth, all of their hosts. As he gathers the waters of the sea like a wineskin, as he puts the deeps in storehouses. So we have here the word of the Lord. The heavens were made firm. So we see that the word was there at the beginning, as we see here in the beginning, the Son was there, and by the breath of his mouth, all their hosts. So whether you want to interpret that, the Ruach, well, breath is Ruach. The Ruach was there also, and he gathers the waters of the sea in the wineskin. So to me, and the way I'm reading it, you have all three there in the beginning, and they were Echad. And here we're also reading within these scriptures that the Father and the Son are Echad, which means united. So, and then I wanted to, I'm not going to dwell on that much. There's a whole lot you can talk about on Genesis 1:1 and so forth, but I want to go to 3. All things were made by him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In Wisdom of Solomon 9:9, and with you is wisdom, which knows your works, and was present when you were making the world, and which understands what is pleasing in your eyes and what is right according to the commands. In Proverbs 30, verse 4, who has ascended up to heaven and descended? Who has gathered the winds in his fists? Who has bound the waters in his garment? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? And what is his son's name, if you know? So here, once again, we're putting the Father and the Son there. We also had the Ruach in there. So just emphasizing that on the two that were there at the beginning, and where nothing was made that was made. And then lastly on that is, I'll skip that. I want to go to the lamp, on verse 4, for he is life, and his life is the lamp of men. Malachi 4:2, but to you who fear my name, the sun, which is a brilliant light, not the S-O-N, but the Sun of righteousness, shall arise, and healing in his wings. And you shall go out and leap for joy like calves from the stalls. So we see a comparison of, the life is in the lamp, and he is being represented as this lamp. And Malachi 4:2 is talking about this brilliant light of righteousness shall arise, and with healing in his wings. So it's tying in with the lamp, with the life in the lamp that's mentioned here. And then in Matthew 6:22 and 23, we're talking about the light of men, regarding this lamp of men. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye be single, the whole body shall be full of light. But if your eye be evil, the whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you be darkness, how great is that darkness? So we see that, being your eye being single, meaning it's focused down the right path and not all over the place, or reference to being evil. So it's about the heart, and that's where your treasure is, and that's the fruit of the spirit. So the light of the body is the eye, and our focus is in Yah. Then on also in that darkness terminology, I want to speak to two other verses. John 3:19-20. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and that men love the darkness rather than the light, for their works were wicked. For everyone who practiced evil matters hates the light, and does not come to the light, lest his work should be exposed. And so we see in verse 5, and the lamp does shine in the gloom, but the gloom and darkness do not have power over it. And so we see here, they're practicing evil matters, so they hate the light. So by practicing these evil matters, hating the light, they do not come to the light. So they can't overpower the light, because they can't even come to it because of the evil that they're in. And then also in John 12:44-46, Yahusha cried and said, "He that believes on me believes not on me, but on him that sent me. And he that sees me sees him that sent me. I am come as I am come a light into the world, that whoever believes on me should not stay in darkness." So it's further defining that believing in him, you will not be in darkness. And then on, was it verse? I'm losing my place here. 10. Okay, so he is eternal. The world is made by him, but the world does not recognize him. Why do they not recognize him? Here on verse 10, in Matthew 15:24, but he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Yashar'el. So the lost sheep, he's sent after them, and only they can recognize him. So that's another important piece, I think, that when he's talking about the sheep recognize him. They recognize the shepherd. So that's another point on the recognition part. And then on 12, only to them who receive him gives ability that they be made sons of El, who believe in his name. I think that Hebrews 1:2 hits on that. In these days he spoke to us in the Son, whom he appointed heir of all, through whom is indeed made the ages. So the Son, he appointed heir of all. And here, when we're talking about the, was it 12? Yeah, sorry, 12. He gives ability to make sons of El. So he is the heir, and us also have him giving us the ability to be the sons of El will also put us and put us in a position of being heirs also. So, and I think we all know that. And I think I got one more. Okay, so on 17, for the law was given to Moshe, truly, the grace and truth through Yeshua Mashiach. We read in 1 John 3:18-19, my little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. And by this we know that we are of the truth, and shall set our hearts at rest before him. So when we're talking about the grace and truth through Yeshua, we see here he also further defines that, let us not love the word and tongue, but in deed and in truth. So we got grace, we got truth, we got deed. Obviously, the deed is the part where we are proving it. So I just wanted to point that out in regards to that. So I think that's really all I wanted to add that I saw you guys did not cover. So with that, I think Michael will start the next reading section.
Yeah, we'll read 19. I just wanted to comment on 17. I didn't realize that you both touched on it, that the law was given through Moshe, so he was a vessel, not by, like Noel pointed out with the KJV. So that's really awesome.
Yeah,
Okay, so
that's a great question, because when people question you, oh, that's Moshe gave that law. No. Who gave it to Moshe?
right.
Who inscribed it? Who gave it to him? Yeah, okay.
He was the vessel. Okay, so 19. We'll pick right up. This is his scroll, and this is the witness of Yochanan. When the Yehudim sent priests and the Lewaim, or Levites, from the Yerushalayim, that they should ask him who he was, he confessed and did not deny, but confessed that he was not the Mashiach. So they asked him, if so, who are you? Are you Eliyahu? Are you not prophet? But he said no. Then they said to him, tell us who you are, in order that we may return and answer to them who sent us. What do you say of yourself? He answered, I am the voice which cries, in the wilderness, make the way straight. Yashar'el, the prophet, had said, now they who were sent to him were of the Perishim. So they asked him and said to him, why are you immersing, if you are not Mashiach, nor Eliyahu, nor prophet? Yochanan answered them and said, I am immersing you in water. However, he whom you do not recognize abides among you. He is ready to come after me, but he was before me. Him whose shoelace I am not worthy to draw off. These things were done on the earth where Yochanan was immersing. And on the next day, Yochanan saw Yeshua, who came up unto him. And he said, behold, this is El, who takes away the iniquities from the world. It is he of whom I said, after me comes the mighty one, who existed before me, for he is before me. And I did not recognize him, but in order that he should be published in Yashar'el. Because of this I came, and am immersing water. And Yochanan did witness of him, saying, I saw the Ruach descending from the heavens, almost as a dove, and remaining upon him. Truly, he who sent me that I should immerse with water, he said to me, he upon whom you will see the Ruach descending, and remaining upon him. This is he who immerses in Ruach HaKodesh. And finally, and I saw it, and am doing witness that this is the Son of God. Up next with a commentary.
Okay. I'm not going to add too much to this section, and I'm sure Rob and Michael have some great things to add. The one thing I really wanted to touch on, and I'm making sure that I'm commenting on the right section here. I mean, where you read, I believe you read to at least the 32. And
30.
You read to 30?
No, we should have read to 34.
Yeah, 19
okay,
to
cool.
34.
All right. So in verse 32, we see the dove. And I've been talking a lot about this recently, and Rob and Michael have as well. So John doesn't give us a lot of details on the baptism, quite like some of the other Gospels. He kind of says, oh yeah, I witnessed, when I baptized him, I witnessed this, the Ruach HaKodesh coming down like a dove. Well, I've been researching a lot recently on this notion, this Yahudim notion of the Ruach HaKodesh being identified as a dove. And this is something that the ancients often referred to as the Bath Kol. The Bath Kol can best be described as a heavenly voice, but just as importantly, the daughter of a voice. It's a feminine voice. It is used to separate again, in this gospel, there's no voice saying, this is my son whom I'm well pleased. That's why I'm saying that John kind of just touches on it briefly, but he does talk about the dove. And as I think we can all kind of agree that this is the same passage as in his other baptismals, where the dove comes down and a voice from heaven says, this is my son with whom I'm well pleased. And I just really want to point that out, that every single time in Hebrew literature where you have a dove coming down and a voice from heaven, it is identified as feminine. All right. So think of a feminine voice saying, this is my son with whom I'm well pleased. So the Bath Kol is used to separate the speech otherwise deriving from the word of Yahuwah. And I want everyone to think about this, because if Yahusha is the word of Yahuwah, then who is speaking? Because it's always the word of Yahuwah that's speaking, right? It's Yahusha from the very beginning. He was the son of El in the beginning. He was always there in the beginning. He was the one giving grace. He was the one giving truth. He was the one speaking for the Most High. But he's not speaking here because he's being baptized. All right. So we are being treated to a voice from heaven, and it's feminine. A she, or rather the bath coal, is often symbolized by a dove. And of course, that sounds familiar. Now, I pulled up a couple passages here. I pulled up one that specifically says the word bath coal. It comes from the Aramaic Targum. This is in Genesis chapter 38. And this is the instance of when Tamar is about to be burned at the stake. And if anyone has ever read the Scarlet Letter, that was like high school literature reading curriculum, that has to be a direct ripoff of this account. Like it has to be, because she's being burned at the stake. She's the son of Shem, the granddaughter by some accounts of Shem. She's about to be burned at the stake because she's found to be pregnant. And it's like, well, who was she sleeping with? She's the son of a priest of a Melchizedek. She's got to be burned at the stake. And Yehuda steps forward and says, it was me. I did this. And in this passage, that's the context. And then this voice comes out of heaven and speaks to everyone. And Yehuda acknowledged and said, Tamar is innocent. She is with child by me. And the bath coal fell from heaven and said, from before me was this thing done, and let both be delivered from judgment. So the bath coal, this voice from heaven, is saying, this is my master plan. I put all this together. I'm the matchmaker here. And Yehuda said, because I gave her not to Shelah my son, hath this happened to me. But he added to not to know her again. All right. Another passage of and now that I look at that, it doesn't necessarily say a dove there. I don't think. It might be in the passage before afterwards. I didn't write it down. But here we see in the Odes of Solomon another dove. Odes of Solomon, chapter 24, verses 1 through 3 says, the dove fluttered over the head of our Adonai Messiah because he was her head. Okay, so the dove is symbolized by her. And she, the dove, this is the bath coal, and just so we know that Odes of Solomon does clarify later that this dove is the Ruach HaKodesh, and she sang over him, and her voice was heard. And then the inhabitants were afraid, and the foreigners were disturbed. So it's very much like a baptismal scene here, right? That there's Adonai Messiah, and the dove is fluttering above his head. Here's another one from the Targum, Deuteronomy 28:15. Then fill the bath coal from the high heavens and said, fear not, ye fathers of the world, if the merit of all generations should fail, yours shall not, and the covenant which I have confirmed with you. All right, so that is all I have on this. I just wanted to touch on, and then I'm going to hand it over to you. I think, Rob, it's your turn.
Yeah, thanks for touching on the bath bowl. I'm just going to hit a few verses on here for verse 23. The voice that cries in the wilderness, for the way of Yahuwah, make the way of Yahuwah straight. We read in Zechariah's prophecy in Luke 1:76. And you, the child, shall be called a prophet of El Elyon, for you shall go before the face of Yahuwah to prepare his ways, to give knowledge of Yeshua unto the people of the remission of sins through the tender mercy of our Yahuwah, whereby the dayspring from the high has visited us to give light to them that sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet to the way of peace. So I just wanted to mention the Zechariah's prophecy regarding his son, John. And then 26, immersing you in water, however, he who do not recognize abides among you. Matthew 3:11, I indeed immerse you with water unto repentance, but he that comes after me is mightier than I, whose shoes I am not worthy to bear. He shall immerse you with the Ruach HaKodesh and with fire. So some additional input on that. Then when he is ready is before me, whose shoelaces I am not worthy to draw off. In Matthew 11:10-11, it says, for this is he who it is written, behold, I send a messenger before your face, who will who will prepare your way before you. Most certainly I tell you, among those who are born of women, there has not arisen anyone greater than John the Baptizer, yet he who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. So hence we have John being the greatest man, yet he's not even worthy to undo the shoelaces of the Messiah. Any person on earth is still not even worthy to do so for any that are above. So I just thought that was something good to think about. And then we have talking about the atonement sacrifice. I don't need to do that. Okay, then on the last one here, we talk about I saw the Ruach descended from the heavens almost like a dove and remain upon him. We read in Luke 3:22, the set apart spirit descended in bodily form like a dove upon him with the voice that came out of heaven, saying, my son, the beloved, in you I did delight. And also I want to add to that, is a millennial kingdom verse in Isaiah 11:2, when it talks about verse 33. The spirit of Yahuwah shall rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, and spirit of knowledge and the fear of Yahuwah. So it's prophesying that the spirit of Yahuwah is going to rest upon him. So we see here it being foretold, the Ruach and the spirits are going to be upon him. So he's going to be totally full of the spirits in his rule. So that's all I wanted to add to those verses. All right, Noel.
I'm up. I got.
Oh, sorry.
But I'll be real quick. And ironically, I don't even mention the Ruach in my notes, which is funny. But the only two I have is number 27. He is ready to come after me, but he was before me. Him whose shoelaces I am not worthy to draw off. I just thought he is ready to come. It's like he's waiting for the Father's command at his appointed time. I think that's amazing. Everything's done through the Father's will. Galatians 4. Now I say, as long as the heir is a child, he does not differ at all from a slave, although he is an owner of everything. But he is under guardians and managers until the date set by his father. I just wanted to point out that he was waiting for the date set by his father in order to come, and John knew that. I also want to point out, and Rob mentioned it a little bit, how humble John is. Like, that's just amazing, and I'm humbled just reading that he didn't even feel like he could tie a shoelace. And as Rob said, as a fleshly human being, he's the greatest. So just to me, it gives us kind of motivation on what's really important, and that's humility. The last thing, and I'm surprised none of you guys mentioned it. Number 29, the Hebrew doesn't mention the Lamb of God. I thought that was interesting. And on the next day, Yochanan saw Yeshua, who came unto him, and he said, "Behold, this is El, who takes away the iniquities of the world." And it's ironic that they do the same thing on 36, which we'll get to next time. They took away the Lamb of God, the Passover lamb. I'm hoping we can get into some discussion about that and why they would do that. The only kind of cross-reference I found on 29 was in Zechariah 3, when Yeshua the high priest is standing before the angel of the Lord and Satan at his right to accuse him. And the Lord said to Satan, "The Lord rebuke you, Satan. Indeed, the Lord has chosen Jerusalem, rebuke you. Is this not a log snatched from the fire?" Now Joshua was clothed in filthy garments and was standing before the angel. So the angel of the Lord spoke to those standing before him, "Take off his filthy clothes." Then he said to him, "See, I have removed your iniquity from you, and I will clothe you with festive robes." So a lot of people say Joshua the high priest is a prototype, but they also say that he's the angel of the Lord. And it appears in Zechariah 3 that the angel of the Lord is removing the iniquity from Joshua. And that appears to be kind of a cross-reference on 29, where he is the El that takes away the iniquities of the world. And that's all I have for that section.
Well, I did not catch that. So, and it's amazing that, when I'm going through these notes, that there's just some things I overlook. Like I'll look at both and I don't know why I missed that. Now, I'm going to be really tripped out. I'm going to be really tripped out if I go to like the Hebrew Revelation and all of a sudden the lamb that steps in front of the throne is missing. I'll be like, what's going on here? So that will be interesting to kind of talk about and maybe form some doctrines on. And because we've talked about this before in the group. There's the big debate on whether he was the Passover lamb that was in a ministry for 1 year. He was only a year old when he was crucified, versus a heifer, which would have been more like 3 years. So I don't know. I don't know if that adds to that or not. So that's all I have at the moment, because you're the first to bring that up. So we'll have to kind of keep looking for that as we go through John. But anyways, I am continuing on now. Rob, before I continue on, was there anything you wanted to add to anything Michael said?
No, I didn't note that, but when I read that, I saw that the lamb was not there, and it was not in the Hebrew either. So that was I found very interesting, because it's used so much out there, that terminology. So yeah, I'm interested in seeing further if we see it or not see it.
The thing is, though, is that I almost wonder what would be in terms of incriminating, right? Like Yahushua was. You guys know what I mean by this. When Yahushua was murdered or killed, crucified because of accusations brought upon him. I almost wonder what's worse, though, because he says here, "Behold, this is El, right, who takes away the iniquities from the world." Like that sounds a lot more blasphemous to me than just calling someone the Lamb of Elohim. I don't know. Maybe
I agree.
that's something. Yeah. All right. All right. So let's move on. I think we are on 35.
No. Before you move on, too, I just want to point out that
Go ahead.
It makes more sense, I guess,
Michael,
than the Passover.
Michael,
You're breaking
you
up.
were really choppy right there.
Okay, sorry. I'll put myself back on mute.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. It was just really broken up. I wanted to make sure you knew that. Okay, so I think we're on 35. Let's keep reading this. We'll finish our reading in John, and then we'll discuss it. And on another day, Yohanan and 2 of his Talmudim stood again, looking at Yeshua as he walked, and said, "Behold, the Malach of Yahuwah." And honestly, I don't know what the word Malach is. Maybe you guys can enlighten me on that.
Messenger.
Messenger. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, and so this is again. So in the Greek, right there, it says he says, "Behold the Lamb of Elohim" again, and so he doesn't say it here in the Hebrew. And the 2 Talmudim heard him speak and went after Yeshua. Then Yeshua, turning himself around and seeing them following after him, said unto them, "Come and see it." So they came and saw where he stayed. And they stayed there that day, and it was about the 10th hour. Now, Andrew was the brother of Simon, and Simon Kepha was one of the 12, who heard of him from Yohanan and followed him. And this one, who is Andrew, found Simon his brother and said to him, "We found." It's cut out there, Rob. I think it's maybe Malak again. And he brought him unto Yeshua, and Yeshua looked at him, saying, "You are Shimon, the son of Yonah. You will be called Kepha," meaning rock. So the next day he wanted to depart to Galilee, or Galilee, and he found Philip and said to him, "Come after me." Now Philip was from the city of Beit Saida, where Andrew and Kepha and Philip were from. Then he found Nathanael, and said to him, "We found Yeshua, the son of Joseph of Nazareth. It is he of whom Moshe wrote in the law and in the prophets." But Nathanael said to him, "Can there be any good thing in Nazareth?" Oh, the Hebrew still gets that great line. Philip said to him, "Come and see him." Yeshua Mashiach saw Nathanael, who came there, and said, "Whom do you think that truth is from? Man of Yashar'el, who is without any deception." Nathanael said to him, "How do you recognize me?" Yeshua answered and said to him, "Before Philip had called you, I saw you under the fig tree." Nathanael answered him and said, "Rabbi, you are the son of Eloah. You are the king of Yashar'el." Yeshua answered and said to him, "Are you able to believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than this." And he said to him, "In truth I say to you that you will see the heavens opened, and the messengers of Elohim ascending and descending because of the Son of Man." Certain words were marked. Oh, okay, that's the end of it right there. That's Rob's. Certain words were marked in bold. All right, so that's it. So I am handing it over to. I lose track, but back to you, Rob.
Yeah, I wanted to finish that verse 41. Apparently, I didn't wrap that cell, and it says, and this one first found Simon his brother and said to him, we found Mashiach. So they were saying they found the Messiah. All right, so I'm just going to touch on a few here. Verse 45, when you're talking about Yeshua, the son of Netzeret, it is he whom from Moshe wrote in the law and in the prophets. We have in the prophets Isaiah 7:14. Therefore Adonai himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall be with child and shall bring forth an infant son, whose name is called Emmanuel. So that's just an example of bringing that in on the prophets being spoken of here. And then the word in 46, but Nathanael said to him, "Can there be any good thing in Netzeret?" The Thayer commentary dictionary, I should say, states that word is the guarded one. And I know the root word is what Netzar, being branch and so forth, and on and on. So I thought that was interesting. On verse 48, how do you recognize me? Yeshua answered and said to him before Philip, and he had called you, I saw you under the fig tree. Well, if in Psalm 139, it says, "O Yahuwah, you have searched me and know me. You know my down sitting and you know my uprising. You understand my thoughts afar off." So we know Yah has this ability, and now we see in the Son has this ability. So it just solidifies that the Father and the Son are Echad. In 49, we have Nathanael answering him, "Rabbi, you are the son of Eloah. You are the king of Yashar'el." And so that's spoken of in Zephaniah 3:14. "Sing, O daughters of Zion. Shout, O Yashar'el. Be glad and rejoice with all your heart, O daughters of Jerusalem. Yahuwah has taken away your judgments. He has cast out your enemies. The king of Yashar'el, even Yahuwah, is in the midst of you. You shall not see evil anymore." So we're talking about the Zion, O daughter of Zion here, and that the king of Yashar'el will be in the midst of them. So that just gives a reference of who is the king of Israel, and him referring to that rabbi, to Yeshua, that he is the king of Israel. And then lastly, on 50, I have, he answered unto him, "Are you able to believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than this." So it's almost like, "Hey, I told you I saw you, and you believed you." Almost when I read that, I was like, "Is he shocked? Was he shocked that he believed that so simply?" But we read about the simple belief. John 20:29. Yahusha said unto him, "Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet have believed." So here he's referencing those who didn't see him, didn't experience him, They're not there in his presence and or anything, and we believe, such as us. We're reading the written word. We are seeking it out in faith and in love and truth, and we have the belief. So we will be blessed. We are blessed for doing so. And lastly, I want to end with one of my favorite verses is Matthew 18:3-5, and said, Amen, I say unto you, except ye turn back and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of Yahuwah. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of Yahuwah. And whoever shall receive one such child in my name receives me. And it goes back to, I know Michael was touching on it. We're talking about the humility. We're talking about the reading the scriptures in its simplicity and understanding it, comprehending it through the Ruach. We should be able to understand these things and not need seminary teaching, so to speak, to decipher and wordplay and so forth on these matters. We should be able to understand these, in my opinion, and come to this faith in love and understanding as a child. So that was all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Just to finish, I don't have too much. I have a couple of questions that I'm hoping we can move dialogue on the chat, or if Robert can answer. But again, I just want to point out the remove. Can you guys hear me? Am I
You're
good?
Michael, you're so choppy.
you're really choppy.
Can you reconnect?
I don't know why.
Okay, I think we just lost him. So if he reconnects, then he can give his commentary. Oh, here he is. All right. Okay, if he reconnects, he can give commentary. I'll go ahead and give some of mine right here. Now, oh, he's back.
Can you hear me? Do I have a better connection or no?
Yes. You know what? Go ahead while you have a good connection.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. Real quick. So again, I want to answer. They were in 36. There's got to be Hebrew.
Sorry, hey,
Michael.
Are they?
Hey, Michael. It's just not. It's really choppy. I can't hear you. So,
What
let's give
if I
you.
turn off my camera? Does it improve the signal?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, way better.
Yeah, do that.
Go ahead and talk.
All right. I'm sorry, guys. I really am. Again, why did they remove it in the Hebrew? I don't know. There's got to be a reason. It crossed my mind, is it malicious? Are they doing it on purpose to kind of diminish him? But I don't know. So he is a messenger, no doubt. It just, to me, I thought it was weird because I guess I've always thought that he was always the Lamb of God, and this Hebrew John is removing it. So I would like to open that up eventually to the chat room. The other question is on number 47. Yeshua HaMashiach saw Nathanael, who came there and said, "Whom do you think that truth is from? Men of Israel, who is without any deception." I really had nothing to go by there. So I just wanted to know what you guys thought as well. On whom do you think that truth is from? Who is he talking about? And then the two comments. I was reading that 38 and 41. It's two Hebrew-speaking apostles using Hebrew terms, Rabbi and Messiah. So they were saying that this is proof that they thought the New Testament was written in Hebrew as well. So I just thought that was interesting, that it kind of gave proof to these Hebrew Gospels, that in 38 and 41, these two Hebrew-speaking apostles are calling him Rabbi and Messiah. And then finally, the good stuff, number 51, and he said to him, "In truth, I say to you that you will see the heavens opened and the messenger of Elohim ascending and descending because of the Son of Man." And to me, that's a post-mill, or that's a Day of the Lord apparent post-mill verse, because Josephus and that other rabbi, they talk about these angels descending in the clouds and chariots of fire, right? Chariots and fighting in 70 AD. So I just wanted to point that out, that appears to be the same thing. And I also want to say that when messengers or Elohim ascend and descend, there's earthquakes. So I know that says it in Isaiah, but Matthew 28, 1 and 2. Now after the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to look at the tomb. And behold, a severe earthquake had occurred, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled away the stone and sat upon it. And his appearance was like lightning, his clothing as white as snow. Again, I just wanted to point out that when angels ascend and descend, there's earthquakes. If you're ascending from Tartarus, that might possibly, create mudfloods. And then finally, relating to that, Malachi 4:5. Behold, I'm going to send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. We've already discussed earlier that people, they say Yochanan was that Elijah the prophet. So is that within a generation of 40 years, 40 or so years? Or 2,000 years later, are we expecting another Elijah the prophet to come before his great day? Sorry for the connection issues. That's all I got for right now.
Well, Michael, I really do appreciate that we couldn't make it through the first chapter of John, and you already brought up the mud flood into it. So that was awesome. All right. If I were to take a survey with almost anybody, maybe like very strict Baptist people who just sit down and say the Bible, they might get this. But if I were to ask anybody, who was Yahusha's, or I would ask, say, Jesus, who, amongst the common people, who was Jesus's first disciple? Probably very few people could answer that question. And yet we see it right here. The first disciple was Andrew. All right. But here's the thing, though. All right. If I were to ask most people who was his first disciple, most people couldn't answer. And that probably has something to do with the fact that his domineering brother came along, Kepha, all right? Of the four leading disciples, which include Andrew's brother Kepha, apparently Andrew was later listed as one of the four prime disciples, except for the fact that, people could say what Yohanan did and what Kepha did. Nobody can really say what Andrew did. So they included Andrew, his brother Kepha, and the siblings Yaakov and Yohanan. Andrew is, of course, the least known. When asked, most people probably wouldn't even know that Kepha had a brother. I would assume. I haven't taken the survey, but if I did, I would assume that people would go like, "Wait, he had a brother, and one of them was one of the disciples." Despite that, among his 9 humble mentions in the Bible, and I say humble because Andrew's only mentioned, I guess, 9 times. We've already seen a couple of them in the first chapter here of John. Some of which simply, and now maybe the Hebrew Gospel of John has some surprises and he appears more in it. I don't know. I don't think there's a conspiracy to take him out. Some of them, might I remind you that when he's introduced here in Yohanan chapter 1, he's introduced. How's he introduced? As Kepha's brother. Ouch. So before Simon Kepha was ever even introduced to the reader, Yohanan Simon actually means hot-tempered, volatile, and violent. All right. So his brother's name is hot-tempered, volatile, and violent. So he's not even introduced yet, and Yohanan introduces us to Andrew as Simon Kepha's brother. All right. And yet he was, of the 12, he was the first that was introduced by Yahusha. All right. Archaeologists have, if we're going by the official history here, and we're going by that the Sea of Galilee in the land of Israel is the real location, and I've been there. It's beautiful. The Sea of Galilee is a beautiful location, and I've been to the house of Peter of Kepha. All right, and it's actually right directly across this road from a synagogue where apparently Yahusha actually spoke at. So when they went to the synagogue, they literally walked out the front door and took about 4 steps across the street, and they're on the porch of the synagogue. That's beside the point, though. Archaeologists have called the house Kepha's house. All right, they don't call it Andrew's house. Nobody knows. If you go there, they're like, "Wait, Andrew lived here." Like this is how little this guy is known. It's not Kepha and Andrew's house. It's just Peter's house. All right, so we're talking about major snubbing here. If anybody is a younger, I'm a younger brother, and like this like hits me at my core because I know what it's like as a pastor's son to grow up in the church being my older brother's younger brother. Like I was always, I was always his brother. That's what people knew me at. And I just, that irked me so much. Now, before we forget, the name Andrew will be forever adorned on one of the 12 gates in New Jerusalem. But here's the thing. In truth, Andrew exemplified a close relationship with Messiah, which very few of us care to have. His is most evident in the fact that he was often, pay attention to this, okay? And we can find this later on in John. He was the means by which others encountered Messiah, Andrew. It was Andrew who brought the young boy with the 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish to Yahusha, while the other disciples seemed clueless. This was in Yohanan 6:9. Now, I haven't read that far ahead in the Hebrew Gospel, but I'm assuming it's still there. Andrew was so thorough at telling others about Yahusha when the Greeks sought out the Messiah through Philip. This is in Yohanan chapter 12, verses 20 to 22. Again, hopefully it's still there. It was Philip who corralled Kepha's brother. If Andrew knew how to set up an introduction to Messiah, it's only because he understood maybe better than anyone I'm putting forward that Yahusha wanted to meet everyone who desired to meet with him, and Andrew was that person. Knowing full well his brother's tendency to dominate, and let's face it, Kepha, he dominated. Andrew did not. In John chapter 1, we see that Andrew did not hold Kepha back from Messiah. Who's the first person he went to? He went to his brother. He could have been like, oh, dude, this is Messiah. I do not want to be Kepha's brother to the Messiah. Like, I can sympathize with that. I wouldn't want to be my brother's younger brother to the Messiah. But he could have had him all to himself and just snubbed his brother completely. And yet, that's the first thing he did. He went to Kepha. And that's we see in chapter 1, verses 41 through 42. He personally led the rock to Yahusha. It was his very first recorded action. One thing seems certain: Andrew did not seek to be the center of attention, nor resent those who did. Scripture never once corrects Andrew for his missteps, nor thinks to document them. Scripture does speak out against other disciples, but not Andrew. He was slow to speak, we know that, careful in what he said, and he is only recorded ever as saying the right thing. The same cannot be said of Kepha and Yohanan. I just want to point that out because, like, if any of us were to land in Scripture, man, there would be so many quotes for me in Scripture where people would just be like, "Oh, he pulled another Noel. He landed in, here he is in this book. Oh, hopefully they would see that I, had a heart for the Most High, but I would be that guy who had some serious missteps along the way, not Andrew." Now, I understand here that, and thank you, Michael, for bringing up the mud flood and all that. And I have pointed out on this website and Discord channel and YouTube land that the martyrdom of the 12 disciples are really sketchy at best. I do think that Kepha was crucified. I don't have any reason to doubt that. Some of the others, I put a lot of doubt in that. However, I'm going to give you the official narrative of Andrew's martyrdom. And that being said, the apparent martyrdom of Andrew fits his character like a glove. All right. So if he was not martyred, then whoever came up with the story in the Roman Catholic Church understood him really well. This is what we read. He was ultimately crucified in Greece near Athens for leading one soul to Messiah. That one soul whom Andrew led to Yahusha just so happened to be the provincial Roman governor's wife. Ouch, that's not good. The governor, of course, according to the story, demanded that his first lady recant, and naturally she refused. So in turn, Andrew met the same fate as his brother, Kepha. Or I should say, Kepha's brother was crucified. And now for some more official history before I drop off here. It's what I'm working with today, apparently. I'm just going with official history. I'm going with Paul. I'm going with everything today because I'm in such a great mood. I seem to recall reading several years back that during the Second World War, amazingly, guys, the Vatican is not being bombed, right? The Vatican has never been bombed. It has never been looted. That should tell us something about who's running the world. Hey, wink, wink. But underneath the Vatican, some archaeologists were down there. They were digging, and they were just apparently because they were trying to avoid the potential of American bombings, and so they were going down there into the tunnels. And they started noticing, and this is actually right beneath St. Peter's Basilica. All right, it's a necropolis containing the sepulchres of wealthy Roman families dating back to the 1st and 2nd centuries. Again, according to the official narrative, I haven't looked into this myself. The frescoed mausoleums displayed colorful paintings, etchings, and mosaics illustrating the stories of the deceased. But there was one stunning feature which overshadowed the entire lot of them. No, they're discovering this. They're discovering this new mausoleum down there. It's almost like that scene from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade where he goes down and there's all those dead people buried down there. And well, they started noticing Christian graffiti on some of these tombs of where people were buried. And they started noticing that the graffiti started talking about, if you can almost imagine like different layers of a circle, like a tree stump. And they started noticing that as they got closer and closer and closer, these markings got more and more exciting. And they finally pull up to, how did this go? They started finding that people were talking about how close they were honored to be buried next to Kepha. And finally, as digging parties finally came upon an adjacent wall, they noticed graffiti which marked Kepha is within. And they started noticing all the tombs around saying, "We are buried next to Kepha," or Peter. The moral of the story is that some people want to be the bride at every wedding and the corpse at every funeral. And where Kepha is concerned, even in death, others wanted to be buried next to him. How many of us want to be Andrew? All right. So just Andrew is like the example, I think, that what we see in John 1 here, that we should really be striving for. Everyone wants to go down as the Peter or the John, but Andrew had a clear heart for Messiah. Hopefully I addressed that point well. The last thing I want to point to, and this is, as you guys know, I love extra biblical books. So this is not to negate your point, Michael, because you might be spot on about this. I'm still don't know how I feel about 70 AD and all that. You might be spot on, but there's an account here which says, and now that I think about it, I hadn't even thought about that before, Michael. That may be spot on, but I've looked all over Scripture because let me pull this up here. He's the last verse here, verse 51. Yahusha, or here it says Yeshua, says to Nathanael. Now, just so we're clear that Bartholomew would be his last name. We know Nathanael and Bartholomew are interchangeable, and that could be fighting words for some people. I think it's really well understood that, anyways. And so he says to him, in truth, I say to you that you will see the heavens opened and the messengers of Elohim ascending and descending because of the Son of Man. And we don't see that anywhere else in Scripture. It's never mentioned. It's one of those things, like it's similar to that passage in Matthew when Messiah is crucified and all of a sudden the dead come out of the tombs. and it's just like this little weird like 2 sentences in there in a little verse, and it's like, well, what was that about? And my theory on this is that by the time Matthew was written, by the time Yohanan was written, the Gospel of John, that there had already been many accounts about Messiah. I mean, Luke says that in his opening chapter, that many have attempted to write about the life of Messiah. He's talking more about 3 other people there, just so we're clear. And it's my contention that the Gospel of Bartholomew, it's sometimes called Questions of Bartholomew, may in fact be that source material or based upon that source material. I don't know if Questions of Bartholomew was originally written in Greek or Hebrew. Obviously, we don't have any Hebrew documents on this. Let's see if I can pull this up. Now I cannot pull it up. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Oh, great. Right when I need it, I don't have it, but I'm going to fix that right here. And it's okay if I don't read it, but it's okay if I don't read it. But anyways, in the Gospel of Bartholomew, in the opening chapter, we actually see after Yahusha has resurrected from the dead, and he's got 40 days on the earth before he ascends to heaven, and he's with his disciples. We see his Bartholomew sitting down with him and giving this account of how when he was on the cross or being hung from the tree, being crucified, that he saw the angels ascending and descending from Sheol, from heaven, and he sees the temple being the curtain being ripped, and he sees Yahusha go down to Sheol. And so what's interesting about that is that because that passage there then connects us over to the Gospel of Nicodemus, and the Gospel of Nicodemus connects us to the passage in Matthew where it talks about the dead resurrecting. So it's kind of like a breadcrumb trail that kind of leads right back around again to the scriptures, and that's what I really like about it. That's and again, for sake of time, I don't need to read it. You guys all know it's there. Gospel of Bartholomew, chapter 1, interesting read. We've already read passages from there as a group. So with that, before we open up the mics to anybody who has questions or observations, Michael and Rob, do you have anything you want to add?
2 things I wanted to add. One that, as Michael said, when it talks about angels ascending and descending, that there's earthquakes associated with that. So back into what you were saying, that there was an earthquake at that time, and so if there are any angels doing that during history and time, maybe that's what is associated with earthquakes. Not to say that every earthquake is that scenario, but I don't know. We know that they are associated when they are going up and or down. I did want to tackle what Michael was asking about on verse 47, where Yeshua Mashiach saw Nathanael, who came there and said, "Whom do you think that truth is from, man of Israel, who is without any deception?" So I just simply see that as Yeshua asking Nathanael, "Who do you think truth is from?" And he's addressing him as man of Israel, who is without any deception, and meaning he's not going to give, or not. Yeshua perceives him as a man that is not going to have an agenda or trying to deceive with the question or his answer, like maybe the rabbinic Pharisees would. So I think that's more or less what he's asking. He's basically saying, who do you think? Whom do you think I am? Who do you think that the truth is from? With your honesty, basically. That's what I saw that as. I didn't see it much deeper than that, but that was all I wanted to add. And then I'm good to open up questions after that.
I have nothing else to add as well.
Okay, well, that is as far as we're going to read tonight, John chapter 1. Next week, we'll pick up on 2. We might do 2 and 3 next week. We haven't decided yet. But that being said, I asked you guys in the chat room to take down any notes you might have, any observations. Does anyone Did anyone pick up on anything? Did anyone have any questions? Nobody? Pretty silent tonight.
Hello.
Hello,
Can you-
somebody. I don't know who's talking, but somebody's
It's
talking.
Pam. It's Pam.
Hi, Pam. Oh, hey,
Hey.
Pam.
Hey, there was just a few things that I kind of picked up on. First of all, it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. I mean, you can see the whole structure of the Hebrew thought. One thing that I kind of picked up on was first, you talked about that first verse, how it kind of tied in with the first verse of Hebrew. I mean, Bereshit, Genesis. What they love to do is parallelism. They keep repeating something. So, son of El, son of El, son of El. Do you see that in 1:1? I mean, instead of in the beginning was the word, in the beginning was the son. That kind of hit really hard. But you
Okay, Pamela, you just cut out, which pains me because I was really looking forward to you commenting.
truth. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
You were talking,
Grace.
just so you know, before you cut out, you were talking about the repetitiveness of the Son.
Yeah, where he's talking about, he keeps saying son of El, son of El, El, and so John's he's trying to say something really deep, really important in that one verse, in that first verse, something deep, something he's tying it back to the beginning of Hebrew scriptures. But also, what really hit me was about Moses. The law came through Moses, grace and truly grace and truth through Messiah. And grace in Hebrew would be gracefulness, because they're very concrete thinkers. And grace is a Greek thought. And truth is more like fidelity or faithfulness or truthfulness. So they're more action oriented. So it's like Moses, the law came through Moses, but Mashiach gave us the gracefulness, the ability to keep the law in truth, in truthfulness, in fidelity, and without it being all awkward and, you know, if that makes sense. He said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So many people say the law is a burden. Well, it just shows that Mashiach, he takes away the burden of keeping the law. He gives the truth. That helps us keep it in truthfulness and helps us to keep it without it being such, a burden, such an awkwardness, if that makes any sense. So that's, there's so much there. There was so much there that I just really, really enjoyed. I wish I had the Hebrew, but just to hear it, it was amazing. Thank you,
And that
guys.
makes great sense. That it's the burden, not doing away with doing the law or the works, takes away the hardship of it, the burden of doing it.
Yeah. That's what to me. That's what it's saying there. The Hebrew is saying is that he took the burden of keeping it away, not that it nullifies. They're trying to say it's nullified. No, that's not what the Hebrew thought there, is that he took away the burden and he made it easy, that is graceful, graceful keeping, and helping us be faithful to it, if that makes sense.
Now, you had mentioned, Pam, you had mentioned that maybe I'm misquoting you, but I'd be curious because you had said grace was more of a Greek thought.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, it's
Can
kind
you
of
expand?
abstract.
Can you
Well,
expand on that a little bit? How it's more Greek thinking versus Hebrew thinking?
well, it's an abstract, because if you can't see it, if you can't touch it, then it's a Greek or Western thought. If you can put hands onto it, if you can see a concrete action associated with it, like say for instance, our Sarah, she was often talked about as being very graceful. I mean, just the way she would walk, she was beautiful, but she was also graceful. And I think when we were doing the Asanoth, when you were doing the study in Asanoth, she also, the daughter of the only begotten daughter, when you were doing that, it talked
Yes.
about how she was graceful. Well, it has to do with the way she moves, through the room. See, that's a concrete thing, as opposed to, uh, you know, an abstract. The thought that I was taught in, Evangelica, that grace was the want to. You want to keep the law. You want to follow him. But that's not the Hebrew thought. The Hebrew thought is that she moves through the room, and she's not tripping over the furniture. And so you're moving through you're moving through the law. You're keeping the law, but you're not tripping over stuff. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes very good sense, and that's very different than how I've thought about it. So I'm going to have to try to. I might be like writing you this week, being like try to give examples, something like that, because that's really fascinating. Yeah, Rob, did you have any thoughts to that? No. Okay.
No, nothing further to add on that, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. If was there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, I mean, there's just lots there, but that was the one thing. The one thing that really stood out to me was the grace and truth, because I was hoping that people could understand how a Hebrew would. You were talking about that's very Hebraic in its structure. It's very Hebraic in its thought, and for them, it wouldn't be this abstract. Truth and grace were not abstract. They were, concrete. We see a lot of people saying, all I have to do is believe, in Yeshua, and I'm fine. He's done everything. But that's not the Hebrew thought. It's, Abraham believed, but that word believed means he was faithful. Abraham was faithful, and that's why it was counted to him for righteousness. He was faithful to the things that Elohim had showed him.
Well, that's a huge difference. That's a beautiful, I don't want to say difference, but more beautiful clarity.
Yeah. So it's just, I'm trying to, I mean, this is something that I'm having to unpack for myself, because, I grew up in the evangelical church, and, I had all this, grace and truth, and I don't have to do anything kind of stuff. But that's not what's here. That's not what's here. That's not what Scripture is really. And this gospel is a beautiful tie to the Old Testament. We've talked about how a lot of people say, well, Yeshua's not in the Old Testament. He's not in, but yes, he is. And this beautifully ties in to all that's gone before. Not just the fact that he's quoting from the Old Testament. It's beautiful. Just the thought process. It's just beautiful. I've really enjoyed it. So
Yeah,
I
right
thank you
there in the
guys.
first verse.
Yeah,
Right there
right
in the
there.
first verse, it shows you before the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. It shows you right there, and it says the son of El, and that would probably be, if it's Ben. I think Rob said that it was the word Ben. Well, that means in the continuation of the house, the seed of the house, the inheritor of the house. So, so the son of El, the mighty one. That, I mean, it ties to everything that's gone before. And so I want to thank you all for choosing this. The only thing I'm just like, I really wish I could get a hold of the Hebrew of this. So
Well,
that
so if you go, I'll drop a link into this chat, and you can go to the website where they're actually translating these 4 gospels. And what's great about it is that you can go and see you can actually see the Hebrew. So they'll give you the Hebrew
I would love
transcripts.
that.
It's not. if you read Hebrew, obviously it'd be easier to read it. It's not like going to Bible Hub where they, they have it like the Hebrew and the English, but you can just go read the straight Hebrew if you'd like.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to add to this, because it would pain me to go through this discussion and not bring it up. I didn't really want to make it the focus at the beginning, to make it look like I was being defensive. But over the last year, when we have seen many people fall away from the faith, from Torah, from Messiah, from Scripture as a whole, one of the things that has come up, and this has been, I was a philosophy student 20 years ago, 22, 23, 24, whatever, 23, 22 years ago. And I loved philosophy. I was really really into Plato back then. And so, you walk into I took several philosophy classes. I couldn't get enough of it. And you walk into any philosophy 101 class and they'll, try to like de-Christianize you right away. And they'll tell you how pagan Christianity is. And in fact, it is. I mean, I struggled with a lot of things for years that brought me to this vacuum of seeing how pagan Christianity is. But the thing is that John chapter 1 is heavily attacked. It is heavily shown to be like, see, this is pagan. This is the occult coming in writing this and blah, blah, blah. And one of the things that came up this last year was that John chapter 1 in the Greek mirrors the Bacchae. Okay, if anyone knows what the Bacchae is, the god Bacchus, the Elohim Bacchus, the Elohim of wine. There's the Bacchic mysteries that were insanely popular. Bacchus was like the rock god, the rock sex god of his day. I think Mark Antony claimed to be Bacchus incarnate. But there are passages in the Greek that apparently could be defined as being kind of Bacchae-like. The thing is that I was looking at this, and when the Greekness has been so stripped from this. Again, I'm not claiming that whoever wrote this in Greek was trying to rip off the Bacchae, but I know that some of the people who have left the faith this last year were doing so because of John chapter 1 was on the top of their complaint list. And at that time, I was sitting there. I have learned to really slow down on some of this stuff. And when there are things that I cannot explain in Scripture, I go, you know what? I'm going to take this up to prayer. I'm going to start reading other books. And in time, these things are explained. Quick example. When I was 15 years old, I started reading about the firmament. And I'm like, what in the world is that? I don't get it. What is the great deep, God? And I'd start praying. Explain to me, what is the great deep? I don't get this firmament thing. And Yah answered those prayers. It took, 20 years, but he answered them. And so I'm going back to this, that it's interesting that I'm looking at the Hebrew here, and everything that seems to be accusatory of being the Bacchae is ripped out of here. It just, the verbiage, the language is all different, and it's not the same. And so this is one of those things where I wish I had read this a year ago and I could just give it to some of those people. But the thing was, even if I did, though, it probably wouldn't have mattered. But just, this is a good lesson for all of us, that when people accuse certain things in Scripture of X, Y, and Z, and we don't have an answer for it, it's okay if we don't have an answer. If we take it to Yah and keep searching and searching, he will reveal it to us. And I just kind of want to throw that in there. I'm going to ramble and babble at this point, but I don't see any paganism in this. All right. This is very, very Hebrew, I think, from what I'm seeing, what Pam is seeing, what hopefully Rob is seeing, and Michael, and we'll leave it at that. Does anyone else have any observations?
I just wanted to say I haven't read John in probably a year, and revisiting this, verse 51 is just, I agree with Michael. It's super mud floody. It aligns with Matthew, 16, where he says, like, truly I tell you, some are standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man. And you just kind of see, how you can go through the different Gospels and kind of see these same ideas reiterated in different ways. And it seems like it's here again. I dig.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to give Michael credit for that. I had never made that connection before, and here I've been looking at trying to find what went down in 70 A.D. and that very well could be a reference to 70 A.D. and whatever went down that year. And what many of us have been wondering, if there was a resurrection of the dead that happened, that he very well may have uh, been told that he would see that event. It's the same thing we'll see. Hopefully, I think it's still there at the end of the Hebrew John, where Peter is like having that debate with Yahusha about because he has to spread out his he's prophesied that he's going to die, and he's like, well, what about this guy? Why isn't he going to spread out his arms for you? And John, he's in there. He's like, he didn't say that. I don't know. We'll have to read it, but you guys know the passage I'm talking about. He didn't say like, I would live to see his return or not, but he wasn't quite sure. He wasn't like prophesying, but it seemed to be implied that he also may see it all go down. So that could be bookmarking beginning and end in John. We'll have to see. I'll keep that open. Thanks, Dave. Anybody else? I'll open it up to anyone else. It's about 10 o'clock, and we want to be pretty strict with these. Strict isn't the word, because we really want to leave it open to the Ruach to speak to us, and sometimes observations come at the end. But I also want to be considerate of everyone's time, and for everyone to know that there's going to be an end to this. That we're not going to just keep going till like 2 a.m, and it is 10 o'clock now. So I want to kind of close shop here really soon. Is there anybody else who has anything they would like to get in? Anything they read? Observations?
Question.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Probably going to get stoned over this one. But when Yeshua was baptized and the Holy Dove descended on him when he was filled with the Ruach, could he have chosen not to be the Messiah if he had not been baptized?
That's a great question. Rob, do you have any thoughts to that? Or Michael?
I would say he always has choice, but he always reiterates he is here to do the will of the Father. So I think he had his mind made up. His choice was straight, and he was not going to waver from it. That's what I read.
I think his choice was made when he decided to be baptized. I was just always, I don't know, I was just curious if he had the choice not to.
Yeah, so there's been a couple times in my life where I had kind of a spiritual crisis, and where I was like, Father, I know that you're real, that you exist, that your son is real, but I'm kind of like just tearing all this down, and I'm going to build this from scratch again. In both of those I had one about a year and a half about a year and a half ago, where I was going through very similar things. The summer of 2000, there was the whole COVID thing hit and all that, and I started trying to investigate Messiah from a number of different ways. Now, I just want to make it everyone clear that I believe that Yahusha is the Son of the Most High, that he is pre-existent, that he was here from the beginning, right? Okay, like, just to set everyone straight. But I was looking at some of those options. I was like, what if... Oh, and I also want to make clear that I fully believe virgin birth, okay? Like, I have set that in stone in this group and shown the different scripture verses when we read through, like, even extra biblical texts like the Gospel of the infancy Gospel of Yaakov. But one of the questions I asked was, what if there was, what if he was like just a man, that the Spirit of Messiah came upon him, and that the baptism kickstarted it, right? I don't even know why I'm saying that now, because I don't believe that. But I what I'm saying is I kind of sympathize with this question, this line of thought. The question is, could he have any time chosen not to? I think it would be hard for him to choose not to, because it would go against who he was, right? It's kind of like Torah is the face of the Most High. He's the face of the Father. To read Torah, to understand it, to try to walk it, is to look him in the face the best we can, like a mirror image of who he is. And so I would say the same of Yahusha, that he cannot, by his nature, go against his Father's will. And the reason I say that is because in the garden, the night he's betrayed, here he is like the cup is being passed to him, and he's like, I'm not going to go against your will, Father, but like I really don't want to do this. All right, so there is an instance where people have looked at that and asked the question: could he have thrown it all away, and what would that mean? Obviously, he didn't. So it's one of those questions like we could ask what would happen if he did, but yeah. So he obviously didn't, and he obviously also knew that he was going to be tempted in the wilderness for 40 days. I remember when I saw Rob earlier this summer, Rob and Michael, we did the baptism in Tampa area, and after Rob and Michael baptized me first, and then we all kind of baptized each other. Then we baptized about, I think, almost 50 people or some number like that. And afterwards, Rob comes up to me, and we're talking about the 40 days in the wilderness after he was baptized. And Rob, I think Rob, you said that you got 40 days now to be tempted. You better be on your watch. And I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. And I was all paranoid for the next 40 days. Like, where's the temptation? There were some temptations along the way, but anyways, I'm just saying, like, he clearly knew what he was getting himself into, and I just don't think he would go against his Father's will. I think that's his character. So
I just
I think you bringing that point up is important for any person who is declaring their faith, getting baptized, should be on guard and be in prayer, for the enemy now sees the light. We may not see that light in the physical, but in the spiritual, he's going to see that light in these people who are now newly baptized, and he's going to want to snuff it out as quickly as possible and diminish it. So yeah, we all have to be on guard for that.
I just want to say so quick that like reading the Targums and all that, and seeing that he pre-existed and he was talking, it was his covenant. He was the Word. When he was 12, he was in the temple doing his Father's business. It just appears that he was on a mission. He knew it was his time, and I don't think he was going to go against that. That's just my 2 cents.
I want to stress that I have no doubt that Yeshua is the Son of Yah. I never have. I believe that. I was just curious what other thoughts were on if that was the moment that he had to make a choice for the rest of it.
Yeah, no, I think that was a really good. I really appreciated that question, and I might have not expressed myself right, because I kind of talked a lot there. But what I wanted to really contrast is with the night in the garden, where he was about to go through the horrific torture and death, right? And so the Son of the Most High is about to experience death for the first time in what we know. Like, I don't think he ever died before that. I have no reason to think he did. And so I brought that up because there's something about him. He is entering the ministry as he's being baptized. We see the Ruach come upon him, as you said. And so I am fully on board that, yeah, he knew that was his time. He had been prepping for it since his promise to Adam, since his covenant made with Abraham, and then Moses on the mountain. Like, this is the moment. But sometimes I wonder what was going through his mind. Like, he was like, oh boy, here we go. Like, I've been, it's almost like you can be a hardened soldier. You go through boot camp, you get all training, but when it comes time to get off that boat and run up the beach and you're getting shot at, like, even the most hardened soldiers can be, shaking, at the wrist, right? Like in like in Saving Private Ryan, you got to like vomit off the edge. And yeah, I think that there was him coming into this, that he's like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, it reminds me of like Abraham and Isaac, where going to be sacrificing his son there, and we read in the Targums, Isaac was like, "Yeah, tie me up really good, so I don't waver in my faith." And so Yeshua knew he had to do this, and he knew the burden that it was going to be and how tough it was going to be in that sense. And ask the Father, just like any of us. I think that's one key thing that maybe we overlook is we can ask the Father if it be His will, if something else may be a choice for us in our walk and with what we're doing. And if it is, He will grant it. If it is not, if it has to be, it has to be, and we have to accept that.
Yeah, and on that note about Yah's will, and I'm going to give Josh the credit on this because he has brought this up considerably in the past about being meek. Now, I want to stress here that I am not saying that faith is meekness. All right. However, faith without meekness, as I will show, is not the best recipe. You want to have faith with meekness. Now, as Josh has pointed in this group before, the idea of meekness is almost like if you can imagine a war horse. All right, and and I don't know if everyone's going to like this example per se, but we all have guardian angels, I think, and I could show some scripture, extra biblical scripture to show that. I do believe that we all have angels watching over us. We'll just leave it at that. And if an angel were to, if they were to ride a horse, would they rather have a wild, untamed, unbroken in horse or a horse that's broken in? All right. So the idea of being meek is that if you're like a horse in combat, a horse can charge, it can do double time, it could turn to the right, to the left, do a wheel, it could hold back. It is always going according to the reins of the rider. All right. And that is what the Most High wants from us. He wants us to be uh, a meek vessel so that He can use us, like in this combat situation. There's some times where He wants us to charge ahead into battle, and sometimes He wants us to hold back. And that's where I really think it comes in with prayer when we say, Thy will be done. And I see so often people have this idea of like, well, I have faith, and so I'm going to do this and that. These miracles are going to happen. And then you just see it doesn't happen. And it's like, that person was proud. He wasn't meek. He went charging ahead without the angel, without Yah, right? And they're like, I'm sorry, I can't work with this person. Like, they've got faith, and that's great. That doesn't say anything about their salvation. It just they weren't listening to what Yah's will was to begin with. And hopefully that kind of ties back in with Yahusha as well, that he's always in prayer, like he's always going being in your will, Father, like whatever you want, that's what I'm going to do. Like I've got my ideas of what I want to do, but I'm not going to even speak unless you give me the words. So
Can I chime in there real quick?
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just thinking, tying that back to like Satan's fall as well. He, I think the Messiah paints the picture that the heart of Torah is what we were missing. He explains, how we should be thinking through different commands and basically how to conform to his understanding of how we should be approaching the Torah. And then you see the fall of Satan, and he says, I saw in your heart you had said this. Like Satan wasn't even saying these things out loud, that he was going to ascend on high and all that. And so, the Most High can obviously see the intent and, the place that you're, sort of the lens that you're seeing it through. So I don't think there was even a question. He would have put a stop to it before it even started if he thought Messiah would do anything against his will.
I wanted to say though that that he knew what he was doing. He was telling the high priest that he was going to ascend and sit at the right hand of the Father and come back. He didn't start his ministry to 30. High priest has to be at least 30. And then 2 Samuel 5:4, David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years. So it's you had to be 30 to be like David was a prototype of Messiah, to be the king priest, I thought. So I think all throughout his life, he knew what his role was, to be the Melchizedek high priest for us, to atone for our sins. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's couple points I'd like to share, and something you just said. It's like through doing His will or following Torah, it just brings us back to following the way, which is Yahusha. It's like you gotta. It brings you to Him. That's what it's supposed to do. Bring you closer into relation with Him. And thanks for sharing that part from the Targum about Abram and Isaac. I'm like, wow, that makes so much sense. Isaac wasn't running away. He wasn't not knowing what was happening. That really, makes my heart like actually glad that he wasn't a unwilling like victim, like people want to portray that as. And it really shows the no, we're doing the will of the Father. And another thing is the supernatural birth really resonates with me.
Well, how does I mean, you brought up the supernatural birth really resonates with you. In what way does it resonate with you?
That I think it's something you mentioned before. It was like and it goes to Noah also. It was like, all right, were they born like us? I'm like, and then when you've shared some things, and I'm like, I don't think so. He came out fully formed in a way. It was almost like he was in the belly and then he wasn't.
Yeah.
He was in the womb and then he was in front of her.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because I was getting ready. My next Thursday night group, I'm going to be going over that very subject. That my studies of the birth of Messiah, of Yahusha, I have now concluded actually through, of course, the virgin birth of Miriam, is that I really want to stress here that we all know that Mary was a virgin when she conceived, but not many people think about the fact that she was a virgin after he was born. All right, so the writings of Abraham, we see that it's interesting. It talks about a woman's circumcision. There's a man's circumcision, which we all know what that is. You get a little snip snip. But a woman's circumcision is when she gets to know her husband intimately, and it is concluded when the baby comes out of the matrix of the womb. But my conclusion is that never happened with Mary, that she actually literally remained a virgin afterwards, because his birth appears to be what it would have looked like for Hava had she never sinned. Had she never sinned, Adam and Eve would have had children. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. And since the command is there beforehand that they will be together and know no shame, that's a reference to procreation. That when had it not been through, with Satan and serpent seed and all that, that Cain, had Satan not been the father, Cain would have just been born and kind of appeared in a spiritual sense, not through the pain of. Let's play this way: when Yah created a woman's vagina, I don't believe He created it for the baby to come out of there. I'm kind of. It was kind of created for the seed to be put in there, but not for the child to come out in a spiritual sense. And I think that is what happened with Yahusha. That's something that almost anybody who hears that is going to be like, okay, you've lost it, Noel. But when you start reading some of these texts, it's more than one. You see that with the first Melchizedek, who was Noah's nephew. That was before the flood. He appeared. He wasn't born through the natural way. You see, Noah was born in the natural way, but he was very different, of course. And then, of course, Yahusha, being a Melchizedek, according to the Gospel of Yaakov and the infancy Gospel of Matthew, she was still a virgin afterwards, and there he was. Anyways, I'm talking a long time about that, but yeah.
Hey, I did want to follow back up on the question there that was talking about A lot of people will use the term, well, if you ask Yah and you will receive. And the grace gospel and so forth, in churchianity and so forth. But yes, it is true, but it has to be within his will. And that's what I think a lot of people disconnect on. They ask for this, they ask for that, and it may be 99% of what they're asking for is totally not what they need and in his will for that specific person, good and or bad. So that those are things that it's hard for some people to grasp and understand, because if they come to faith and that their faith is very little, they're expecting these things or thinking that these things should be, and then they're doubting and questioning themselves because here's a God that does not answer anything or show me anything. So it can be very difficult.
Well, yeah, they take out to, like when they say, I'll bring it up, Inshallah, God willing.
Mhm.
I mean, that's like it. The second part gets cut out. Like, that's the most important part.
Yeah. All right, Noel. So it's 20 after. Do you want to shut it down, or anyone else got any last questions?
I'll give one more question or comment. Does anyone have who hasn't maybe spoken yet? Anyone out there? Okay. If not, then let's go ahead and shut it down. Rob or Michael, would either one of you like to close in prayer?
Michael,
Michael, you haven't been on camera here for a while. Are you still there? Would you like to close us in prayer?
Sure, I can. All right. Father Most High, we just thank you for this time today. Just getting in your word, getting wisdom, getting back to the original language. Father, we just love it. This ecclesia, this Diaspora of Yashar'el, we just thank you so much as we gather as a group here. We just ask that you give us wisdom. We can glean from your knowledge, and we can just use these nuggets to share this truth with the others. We thank you so much for your Shabbat and your set apart days, and it's just been a blessing. And what a way to end it! And we first and finally, we just thank you so much for your Son, the ultimate sacrifice, who is our way to live with you forever in the kingdom. We just thank you so much. Amen.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. We will be doing this every Sabbath from now on, and we will be going through the Hebrew Gospel, however long it takes. We don't know. It could take a month. Well, it's not. It's going to take longer than a month. It could take 3 months, 6 months. We don't really know. So, thank you everyone for coming, and hopefully we'll see you guys next Sabbath. So, shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
Shalom. Shalom.
All right, guys. Well, that's the end of our meeting and recording as well. So, you guys, as usual, everyone is free to stay on here and chat. If anyone wants to, the rest of you, feel free to, you don't have to stick around or anything like that. It won't hurt my feelings. I could
Rebecca,
probably.
what you like to say?
I'd just like to say how much I appreciate it, and that it's really good to feel part of a community of like-minded believers. Even though we're all on different paths and we may not necessarily all believe exactly the same thing, I think the one thing that we all have in common is we just want to know the truth, and it's just so good for me to be with you guys every week. And I'm so excited that we have a Sabbath thing now. I'm just really excited.
I found it interesting. Where Rob is from, Massachusetts?
Rob is in Florida. He's in
No, I meant Rob Skiba. He was from
Oh,
Massachusetts
yeah,
also.
yeah. Originally, he grew up in Massachusetts. Yeah, and then of
I
course
found it.
he's lived in Texas since I think 2003.
Yeah, what's interesting is Me, I was born and raised in Massachusetts, then lived in Texas. I was like, oh my, and we're like I was born in May, he was born in June, same year.
So the
So I
19,
found that interesting.
so you were born in 1969 then.
Yep, May 23rd.
All right. So
The so-called tilt of the earth. I always joke about that. 23.5 or 23.
well, he was born. I can look at his birthday real quick, but it was probably like June or July or something.
Yeah,
So you
June,
guys,
I believe.
yeah. So you guys are, yeah, really, really close. All right. A lot of, interestingly enough, I observed that most of the first generation flat earthists, some of which are still around. It seems like Robbie Davidson's kind of stepped away. Rick Hummer hasn't been doing, too much public. Bob Nodel's obviously still out there, but and David Weiss. But I noticed that a huge amount of the first generation flat earthists from 2015 were like born during the Apollo missions. Patricia Steer, um, yeah, they were. I think Mark Sargent, whatever. They were all born in like 69ish to like the early 72, 73, right in there. I kind of found that interesting.
Yeah, I used to say like to people is like, yeah, they supposedly went through the firmament, and I'm like that they were covering something up because something came down at that time.
What do you mean? What do you mean? When did something come down?
Like us.
Oh, okay. Your father, Beth, your father-in-law was born 6/9/69. Oh wow, what a date! What were you saying, Mike?
No, so I was wondering is like what were they covering up at that time to talk about all this, and about the moon, and I was like, they're covering up something big time.
They were. That's a good question. Samuel Shenton, who was the flat earthist then in the 60s, he was like the lone guy doing it. He was from England, and he called the moon missions the Genesis cloak of deception. I love that quote. In fact, I want to call a book that the Genesis cloak of deception. And his thing was just they were trying to. He was spot on. They were just trying to cover up the book of Genesis and thereby, destroy the rest of the Bible. But I don't know. That's a good question. What were they? The thing is that I don't really think that they were doing anything up there yet. I mean, clearly I don't even know how far up Neil Armstrong and all, like, if they even left Earth at that time. I'm not even convinced, that they did. So I don't know. I don't know what they're doing.
Right. I was reading about the new telescope they're supposedly putting out there. I could read it here, called the James Webb Telescope. And like, just, it's a hexagonal 17 or however many I could read it. And it folds up origami style, and 400 things have to go exactly right. And then I'm just reading this like, and then they're talking about how they're seeing more and more. This is from this ain't from a scientific. This is from still a Christian. I don't know if any of you guys ever read the Trumpet. And I'm like, even reading that, I'm like, how preposterous this sounds to me. It's like I'm looking at the same thing, even if you have this so-called super powerful here, besides what they lie about so-called where it's up there and then so-called can look. I'm like, you're looking at it'd be like looking at a flat surface and then almost like then imagining depth. And I'm like, wow, you guys are really seeing into things. You're mad, like, and when you go into what they say and how they talk about it, I'm like, this is again all to me just theory and no proof. And it's like, it's almost like where you could look into the microscopic And then, then they go past the point there, also into the realm of imagination. And then they're doing the same thing when we look so-called into the macro, going into the realm of imagination. I'm just like, yep, theory again, trying to make it real with these so-called satellites that go beyond and can see beyond or see more. And I'm just like, wow, you're really, like I said, there's no depth there. They're it's all in their perception or imagination, more like it, to based on the what they would say the brightness or the light of the star, how far away it is, and all of that. I'm like, wow, this is a whole lot of conjecture. And then we know the money spent, the money by NASA and all of this is just like that. Yep, they've just pure propaganda. Like you said, if they've ever done any of these things, I'm like, no, I think that whole budget was propaganda. And when you look at when they talk about, that the cell phone in your hand or the computer in front of you is way more powerful than that they supposedly had back then, I'm like, okay, people, have you not? And so we can throw like, okay, that sounds preposterous. Like, no way. But then we still look at that model and go, yeah, there's space. And I'm like, and even on a Christian, or they try and go, yeah, that's God's handiwork. And then, like somebody said, where is above? It takes away the whole up and down, right? Because if you're on that side of it, up is the opposite to where I'm standing. So it's like, wow, really great inversion there, Satan. That
Yeah.
it just really, in my mind, I'm like, I've cut through the cognitive dissonance to go, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense.
It's painful. It is so painful. Here we are in the year 2021, and people still believe that over 50 years ago that we landed on the moon. It is painful that there are people who still buy this narrative. I don't know how they can. It's just whatever. Yeah,
How did you take off? There's nothing to push against.
Yeah.
How did you take off from the moon and come back?
I know.
There's nothing. You can't. You know what I mean? Thrust or whatever. There's nothing.
Well, the thing is that even getting to the moon, the calculations on that, if in a globular Copernican universe of spinning around the cosmos, and the way the moon goes around, was it 200 and something thousand miles away, and having to project off the Earth just at the right seconds to they're not even aiming at the moon, right? Like you're like maybe way off here, and just to catch up to it when they get there. The return trip back, how did they do it? You're right. Like, what are they pushing off of? They had lost the rocket ship by this point. Like, they were just in that little tiny capsule, and the math of getting it's just, I don't know. It's so outlandish. I can't even. It hurts to think about it, and that people just so go. And I know that there's like cocky mathematicians out there going, "Oh, well, you're not a mathematician like me," but I'm talking about the common man. That they're just that it doesn't make any sense, and that just buy it.
And remember, they made the movie. Remember, I shared it. Capricorn 1.
Yeah,
they literally exposed it. They didn't do it.
A lot of these deceptions, when they make them into movies, I was actually just thinking about the Titanic movie today, but how they did it. It was very clever. But Jaron at Glowbusters, it might have been on Jaronism, I remember about 5 years ago, a quote that really struck with me is how they NASA, whenever they've made movies about, of course, Capricorn 1 is a reference to the O.J. Simpson movie, correct, where they faked the landing on Mars or whatever. But whenever NASA would make a movie, I think one of them was The Right Stuff, about the moon landings. It was, and Apollo 13 was really big on this too. It was all about the preparation of getting there. and they really wanted to hammer that thought in to everybody. All the work, the preparation, the organic reality of getting there. Because they don't really want to make movies about landing on the moon and being at the moon, because they already showed that on TV. And so they need to try to sell you on the reality beyond the stage. So that's really interesting. And I was just thinking about the Titanic movie with remember, it was Rose, the main character. She's an old woman, and she's been like, it's been 84 years since, or whatever. But they have that scene where an actual survivor of the Titanic comes in, is on that ship overlooking over the wreckage where they discover it down there, to cement the point that she is a witness to the destruction of the Titanic. That's what was being sold on, not the fact that the Titanic may or may not have happened, but here is a witness, who was there. It's really interesting. We don't think about the little ways they sell these deceptions to us.
Yeah, and they just gloss over the fact that it came into port and people got off and everything.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know how big their selfie stick was to be able to, film themselves getting the first man taking the first step on the moon. Except that it couldn't be, because somebody had to jump out first to get the camera ready or something. I mean,
aside from the fact
he's still up there.
I mean,
they didn't have an extendable arm with the camera on it. They didn't.
So when these deep space satellites, they go off and they take these pictures, people, that's a big thing people always bring up to me. They're like, yeah, but what about satellites? They're in deep space, they've gone beyond our solar system, all this stuff. I'm like, okay, wait, this is a great point to talk about, because I'm like, how do they beam those photographs through space? And people like, how does that happen? And people are like, oh, I never thought about that. I'm like, that's right. All they're doing is they're taking data and they're recreating it, right? And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, all those photographs are just data. Now you take that over to the Apollo moon missions, when they didn't even have digital information back then. These are reels of film. Like, if you wanted to show a movie on a big screen, you had to have a projector behind you casting the light onto the screen to make a movie. And on that projector was film. How in the world did they transmit that film that they were shooting on the Apollo missions back to Earth? Like, how did they do that? Like, nobody ever thinks about that. Like, they watched it live from the moon. And of course, we all know Nixon called them on a landline telephone to congratulate Neil Armstrong or whatever. But how in the world did they do that? And so, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just so painful that the cognitive dissonance and the lack of thinking skills. As my friend Chris Bailey has told me, that at this point in history, like, we can debate people not being woken or whatever, but at this point in history, if you still believe September 11th, if you believe the official narrative as they tell it, there's something spiritually wrong with you.